My name is Simon.
And I'm Kelly.
Welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal, a chapter-by-chapter podcast of the A Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin.
And if you want to reach us, you can do so at ghosts.harrenhal@gmail.com. Oh, and we're on Twitter. We have a Twitter account. It's at Ghosts Harrenhal. We're racking up the followers. They're just coming in nonstop.
I feel very young and hip having a Twitter account.
Right.
This is episode 7, chapter 6 of A Game of Thrones, Catelyn 2. Excitingly, we have our first repeat.
We do. Catelyn gets that honor.
How's things?
Good. Good. I appreciate you driving over here in a tropical storm.
You know what? It's raining, and that's all. I'm English. It's not a big thing to have rain falling. It's a bit overblown.
You are English.
Yeah.
So.
But I've got soccer coaching this afternoon. For some reason, that is still not cancelled. But hopefully that will clear out of my schedule.
You have to wear galoshes instead of spikes out there. Stacey and I were going to take Molly to the corn maze this afternoon. That got...
Not a good day for it.
No.
You watching anything interesting?
We have been watching Billions.
Billions.
Which took a while to get into, but the end of season 1, we just wrapped up season 1. It had enough to probably continue us onward.
Carson and I have been watching Fleabag.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we tried the first episode of that.
That's right, yeah.
What'd you think?
It's really good.
Yeah?
It's really very
It won
funny.
a bunch of stuff.
It did, yeah.
So
it's she does this thing where she interacts with the camera. She breaks the fourth wall,
Right.
or whichever number wall. We can never decide how many.
so it's third or fourth.
But she's always like pulling sort of like arched eyebrows to the camera. It's really good. We enjoy that a lot. Anyway.
Okay, so back to the business at hand. Our hope in this podcast is to chat about the chapter without spoiling anything that is to come in an entertaining half hour.
Half hour? Want me to slow down? We'll summarize what's happened. We'll discuss our thoughts on it. We'll provide some interesting background. We'll compare it to the TV show. Indulge in a little pedantry. McKelly, why don't you give us the summary?
All right. So the whole chapter takes place in Catelyn's bedroom in Winterfell. She and Ned have just had a fun game of adult Scrabble? Or maybe adult Twister?
Perhaps.
I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. And Ned's opened the windows to let some of that late summer snow soak into his overheated Stark bones. They then continue to debate the pros and cons of Ned accepting the job of the Hand of the King. Ned is hesitant, Catelyn convinced. They're interrupted by Maester Luwin with a message for Catelyn that was delivered hidden in a box left in his rooms. Catelyn says that the message is in a code known only to her and her sister, and in it, Lysa claims that Jon Arryn was murdered by the Lannasters, naming Queen Cersei directly. Catelyn hastily burns the message. Ned thinks that Lysa must be deluded, but Catelyn defends her sister. Ned tries to argue that this is a clear reason why he should refuse to leave Winterfell, but Catelyn and Luwin prevail in arguing that Ned must go to prevent the descent between Baratheon and Stark and to protect the realm from the impious Lannasters, or impious.
I like impious, but whatever.
The remainder of the chapter is jockeying over which Stark should go and which should stay. We hear more of Catelyn's resentment for Jon and her delight that he might be shipped off to the Night's Watch.
Yeah. So, I mean, my biggest takeaway from all this is that Winterfell has central heating. Who knew? It's a really amazing thing. I mean, it says in the chapter that it was a matter of life and death that it had it. So I wonder if sort of like during the sort of the worst of the winter, sort of the surrounding peoples all sort of descend into Winterfell just to stay alive.
That's a good point. Yeah.
It also sort of like undermines the whole winter's coming. Winter's coming, but we don't care.
That's why he's telling everyone else.
Yeah, that's right. Winter's coming. You might want to move on in.
That's basically a press release. For us, not a big deal. For you guys, more of an issue.
We hear of our first contestant for Bachelorette Westeros.
We do,
as
indeed.
in Jon Snow's mother.
Right.
And that's a lady called Ashara Dane. So Ned killed her brother, Sir Arthur Dane, during Robert's Rebellion, and she's very beautiful.
Yes, so it seems.
Yeah. And it's interesting that we hear of Catelyn and Ned's backstory, that she actually confronted Ned, that it might be Ashara.
Right.
And for the one and only time in their marriage, she made him very angry.
Yeah, that didn't go well.
No.
She woke the snow dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just... Well, I guess we'll talk about...
Yeah, you have more to say about Ashara Dane.
I do, yes.
Yeah. we'll come to that in the background, I guess.
The more I read through this chapter, the more it struck me that Catelyn, it seems like she's got some ambition there with her trying to talk Ned into going to King's Landing.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And it's funny because, again, having read the book, then watched the show, and now rereading the book again, you sort of, the show version of her sort of like pervades your mind. And when you read the book again, you realize she wasn't quite the same character. In the show, there was none of this.
Right.
She was kind of the saintly figure. But she's clearly quite ambitious here. Well, she wants her daughter to be the queen. She wants her future grandchildren to be king. She wants her husband to be hand.
Yeah.
Which is weird, that particular part. I mean, I can get the sort of ambition for your children and grandchildren, but wanting Ned to be hand of the king seems... What's the benefit, really, for her?
Well, so I was thinking about that, and, we learned in Chapter 2 she's not a big fan of the North. She doesn't like the weather. She doesn't believe in the worship the same gods that they worship, so maybe she's just interested in going to be a fancy member of a royal court in King's Landing.
Part of her motivation is that she wants the whole family to pitch up in King's Landing, get out of the North.
Maybe, because
before winter is coming.
Yes, because she seemed rather hurt when Ned said, "Oh, but you're staying here,"
Yeah.
and she
of course,
was like,
she couldn't really backtrack from her position. Well, when I said I wanted you to be king.
you know what? You're right. You're right all along. Yeah, she even said, "Is this punishment?
Right.
Am I being punished for suggesting that you should go?"
Yeah, I think her arguments to Ned are, so we're touching on her conflicting motivations here a little bit, but I think her arguments are quite compelling, that if Ned refuses, then ultimately Robert will see Ned as an enemy. The only way to stay on his side is to accept this offer.
That's an interesting argument, because could it be real? Sure. Like she says, you know the man, but the king is a stranger to you.
Right, yeah.
So she could be right. She could be being paranoid, or it could just be an argument she's come up with because she has an ambition.
But if you sort of like think forward to, so Robert goes back to Winterfell and Ned stays home, that's a long schlep,
right,
to have been turned down by someone who is who owes fealty to you.
Yes, that is true.
He'd have a whole 30 days on the road to think about how annoyed he is that Ned said no.
He comes back empty-handed.
Yeah. That's good. I see what you did there.
I didn't even mean to. Or should I say I did mean to.
You can say
That's just how clever I am.
Edit out the bit where you said you didn't mean to.
Right.
There's a lot more about Catelyn's feelings about Jon Snow.
Yes.
And
she's not a fan.
She's not a fan, and it's kind of it is terribly unfair, it seems, because she's forgiven Ned,
right?
But she still takes it out on Jon, and Jon is the innocent party here, really.
Right. Yeah.
But it's interesting. I think this is well done in the writing, because her reasons for her animus towards Jon are because she thinks that Ned's treatment of him proves a deep abiding love for Jon's mother.
Right.
And that's what irks her.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for that, if he treated Jon in a way that suggested that it was just a one night stand, didn't matter,
right,
then she'd be okay with Jon.
Yeah.
It's because of the treatment suggests something more than that.
Good point.
That she hates Jon so much.
He's just such a lovable kid too.
Yeah.
And I wonder if a little bit of her resentment is because she deep down knows he's such a good person. And
that's interesting.
Maybe he's better suited to be the Lord of Winterfell than her own firstborn Robb. I mean, we haven't learned a lot about Robb yet, but he seems to have a...
I would not say that to Catelyn. Between you and me.
We don't know. Robb could be just as lovely.
Yeah.
And just as capable, but we know that Jon's got some qualities that would make him a very good ruler.
It ties in with what happens at the end of the chapter, where Ned decides to keep Robb in Winterfell to learn the ropes.
Right.
It's like, I see the need here for my heir to learn what to do because he hasn't got it. Jon has it.
Right.
If it was Jon, he probably wouldn't think that, but because it's Robb and he needs a little bit of...
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
It just doesn't fit with what we've learned about Ned so far. For him to keep this secret and hold it so dear. He just seems much more of an open person, especially when it comes to Catelyn.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, you needed to add that when it comes to Catelyn, because he's taciturn to the point of silence to everybody else.
Yes.
He is actually a closed book for everybody
just so
else.
Honest.
He is very honest, yeah. So, yeah, there's something there. One thing that's interesting is she compares the treatment of Jon to the fact that Robert is known to have a slew of bastards down in King's Landing. But her point is Jon is recognised and in Winterfell and treated as one of Ned's children. Robert doesn't do that with his bastards. They're just scattered to the wind and they're expected to do whatever they want. That's the point where she thinks that the treatment is too special of Jon, and that's why she gets this resentment.
It could be just Ned's character. He seems like a guy that takes care of his own.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's perfectly plausible. It could completely be a one-night stand with a barmaid.
Right.
And he just feels the responsibility and can't help himself, yeah. But there is a cruelty to not telling her.
Yeah, certainly, yeah. Leave her guessing all this time.
Yeah. I also like, one of the things I did like, actually, was that Catelyn is shown to be quite a smart thinker, because in her arguments with him, she often found herself, because you're getting her perspective, she shuts up and lets Ned come to the conclusion that she was about to force on him.
Right.
And I think that's good. Our own wives should.
Really, George is in touch with his feminine side.
Yes, apparently. And that doesn't seem plausible, but okay, I'll go with that.
I would have just shouted it out. Yeah. Listen, dummy, this is what you need to do.
Actually, when I say our wives should learn that, we should too, really.
Yeah.
We get a bit more background on some of the Stark children. So we learn that Sansa, who's 11, they think she'll be great down in King's Landing because, I mean, she's already, the term I would use is she's a little princess already.
Yes.
So
she's been studying for this role for a long time.
Yeah.
Arya, not so much.
Arya
seem to be polar opposites.
Yes. Well, I mean, they don't tell us very much.
No.
I mean, they just say she needs refinement, but
yes.
It goes to what we've begun to piece together about
Sounds
Arya.
like Sansa's got plenty of refinement. Arya, not so much.
As we mentioned, Robb needs to learn to run Winterfell, and I like the idea for taking Bran south. That it's important that the two families, the Starks and the Baratheons / Lannisters, form a bond. And Bran, being such a sweet kid and of an age with the royal kids,
right,
could be the cement between the two.
Yeah. So they got a note, and in it said that Jon Arryn was murdered by the Queen Cersei.
It's terrible.
Yeah, they take different opinions. Yeah. They come to different conclusions, I should say, on what this means. Ned and Cat. Ned thinks this seals the deal. I'm definitely not going, and Cat's more of this seals the deal. You need to go.
It's like kind of the modern world, people just hear evidence and they just reinforce their own opinion.
Right.
Whatever the evidence is, it just reinforces their opinion.
Yeah. He refers to the people in the South as a nest of adders and says, I need to stay away from this. And Cat says, no, you need to go because you need to find out what's gone on and bring people to justice.
Yeah. It's interesting that Maester Luwin breaks the tie, basically, by pointing out that the Hand has the power to bring the killers of Jon Arryn to justice.
Right.
And to protect the Arryns. Robin is very young still. Sorry, Robert, not right. Robin.
TV show Robin.
Yes. Is still very young, and Lysa is Catelyn's sister, so they are in a vulnerable position. So becoming the Hand does afford them some protection. True. If he says no and it turns out to be a Lannister or something like that, then they become very vulnerable.
That's a good point. I can't really blame Ned. There's been some history of Stark men going south recently that hasn't ended well for them. We know that Brandon died by the order of King Aerys. We learned that back in chapter 4, and now we learn that his father answered the summons of the king and never came back.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously that does give him reasons for his foreboding. He is talked into it basically by the suspicion of foul play in the death of Jon Arryn, I think, because he is very fond of Jon Arryn, and so that matters personally to him.
Yeah, that's true.
Although I think he's skeptical of Lysa as a witness. I think he thinks she's lost her mind.
Right.
But Catelyn thinks that Lysa is, at least in her right mind, whether she's right or not.
Yeah. I like the line, I mentioned it earlier, where Cat goes, you knew the man, but the king is a stranger to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, she mentions that pride is everything, and he came all this way. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is, yes, you guys might be closer than brothers, but the king and pretty much the whole realm has just traveled almost the length of the continent to come honor you with being his hand, and you're going to be like, ugh.
Yeah. And Ned just doesn't see the honor of it.
Right.
But Kat does.
Yeah.
She recognizes this, and
well, he's happy in Winterfell. It's where he feels he belongs. So.
I just had a moment of clarity. I've got a solution here. Kat should become Hand of the King.
Yes.
Ned can stay home in the cold. She can go down south.
How come nobody has proposed this?
Great idea.
Robert painted a picture in chapter 4 of what he's dealing with at court, and it doesn't sound like a pleasant situation. So he didn't exactly say, Ned, come on, you're going to love it. It's such an easy gig. You're going to have so much fun.
Again, not to be the firebrand militant socialist, but he is the king. It's not really that bad for him. He's
true.
doing all right. He's drinking whatever he wants, siring bastards wherever he feels like. It's not that bad. But yes, I think the day-to-day work of running the realm, which he has completely passed on to other people, is not that much fun. I agree.
Yes. He mentions that back in chapter 4. He said, if I wanted to honor you, I would let you retire.
Yeah.
I'm planning on having you come and run the realm for me.
So they concoct the plan to send Jon to the Night's Watch.
Yes.
It seems like a win for everyone.
It does, yeah. Everybody seems to get what they want.
Yeah, Jon wants to do that.
Right.
Ned knows that he can't take him to King's Landing as a bastard. And Catelyn does not want him in Winterfell.
No, she makes that fairly clear.
Yeah, and also I think you made this point that it removes the threat of him having children who could potentially have a claim to the Winterfell throne.
Right. Yeah.
Because they take an oath not to have children.
Right. So, I find this part interesting. The specter of his older brother Brandon that he can't seem to shake, and
because Catelyn was betrothed to Brandon.
Right. And Ned he's stoic, fair, just, benevolent, and he seems like the perfect lord, and yet he feels like an imposter trying to fill his brother's shoes that he doesn't feel like he's doing a proper job of, which is, I guess it's all about perspective. We see him, we think, wow, he's a fantastic warden of the North, and he feels like this was all meant for Brandon.
Yeah.
Everything.
And presumably that also passes into the marriage as well. Not just his lordship, but also his being husband to Catelyn. But I'm not sure Catelyn spent much time with Brandon.
Yeah, she was 12 when they were betrothed, so
it's not like she misses it, but she perhaps inevitably she thinks what might have been.
Right. Yeah, and they mention, I think, is her internal thought is basically the ghost of Brandon lies between them in bed, as does the ghost of this other woman. So it's a crowded bed.
I guess so.
And it's so warm, they don't even need...
in her room anyway.
They don't need the body heat in her room.
So background information. I said you liked Ashara Dane. Why don't you tell us about the Danes?
I do like the Danes. So House Dane is an ancient house from Starfall in Dorne, traces its lineage back to the first men. Legend suggests that the first Dane followed a falling star to the island in the mouth of the... I don't know how that is said.
I would say Torrentine.
The Torrentine River, where Starfall is today. From the fallen star, the sword Dawn was forged. The greatest Danish knight carries Dawn and is known thereafter as the Sword of the Morning.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's one of my favorite monikers.
That's good. Yeah.
So Catelyn mentions that Ned killed Sir Arthur Dane, who was the most feared swordsman among King Aerys' Kingsguard during the rebellion, and upon returning Dawn to Starfell, Ned may have had the opportunity to father Jon Snow with Ashara Dane. The Dane sigil is a falling star crossed with a sword on a purple background, which is a pretty cool sigil, I think.
That is, yeah.
And their words have never been reported, but I think the key to all this is the opportunity to father Jon Snow. Does that work out?
Yeah, you see, this is my question about this. I don't know the exact timeline of what's... I mean, obviously, we're trying not to give too many spoilers away, so we haven't been given an exact timeline of what happened during the rebellion. But it feels like the killing of Sir Arthur Dayne and the returning of Dawn to Starfall was at the back end. I mean, that's the most feared swordsman amongst the Kingsguard. Once you're getting to that tier,
right,
that doesn't sound like the first steps of the rebellion. It sounds like you're nearing the end game.
Right.
If they're nearing the end game and then Ned meets Ashara, that would mean that that's when the baby is conceived. But Ned brings the baby back to Winterfell.
Right, and he's roughly around the same age as
Robb. Yeah, so basically what I'm saying is that I think the baby has to be conceived at the front end of the rebellion.
Yes.
So I don't think the timeline works. That's not to say that Ned and Ashara couldn't have met up earlier in the rebellion. And actually, then what happens is when Ned returns Dawn to Starfall, he meets the baby.
Right.
That's what happens there.
Thank you for returning the sword. And by the way, I've got someone I'd like you to meet. We do learn later on that I won't go too much into this because I don't want to spoil anything, but they had met prior to the rebellion at
Ned and Ashara.
Yes, Ned and Ashara had met prior to the rebellion at a tourney at Harrenhal of all places. But that seems too long ago.
Yes, I don't think that could be the moment of conception, but they have a history. So the possibility of them meeting up somewhere at the beginning of the rebellion to conceive the baby, and then at the end of the rebellion, they meet back up in Starfall, and Jon is handed over to Ned, and in return for Dawn.
Right. Exchange.
Yeah, that could work.
Yeah,
she's definitely a candidate.
Yeah, they got their spark at Harrenhal.
Harrenhal, yeah.
Met up during the rebellion.
Yeah.
He went to return Dawn.
But the thing is, that middle one is a complete fabrication. We have no evidence to say that they met up. It's just the only way for Ashara to be the mother is that they did.
Right.
So, House Arryn, we've mentioned House Arryn a little bit before. It's one of the great houses of the Seven Kingdom. They're the primary noble house of the Vale of Arryn, aptly named. Their seat is the Eyrie.
I say Eerie, but you have a slightly different accent.
Yeah, it's
than
true.
me.
I can get away with things. Get away with mispronunciations. It's situated so high in the mountains that it's considered impregnable. However, unlike Ashara Dayne. However, because the Eyrie sits so high in the mountains, it becomes unsustainable in the winter. So the Arryns have a winter home at the Gates of the Moon. The house sigil is a sky blue falcon soaring upwards, outlined against a white moon on a sky blue field, and their words are "as high as honor."
I like that. Very distinguished.
Actually, they also grow marijuana. Their current lord is Robert Arryn, or Sweet Robin, due to the murder of Jon Arryn. Yes. He would be the Warden of the East, but as we learned in Chapter 4, King Robert has decided not to pass that title onto young Robert, as he's too young. I think he's just 6 years old.
Right. I agree with him. He's a bit young to be the Warden of the East.
Yeah. Who knows what he might do with the power?
Wait till he's 8.
Yeah, that's plenty.
We meet Maester Luwin, so I thought let's talk a little bit about Maesters, just get some background. I assume you could probably guess that they're scholars, but there's a little more to them. They're, like I said, they're scholars, healers, messengers, scientists. They train in a place known as the Citadel, which is located in Old Town in the Reach. Their order goes Novice, Acolyte, Maester, Archmaester, and Grand Maester. A maester wears a chain of different metals around his neck to remind him of the realm he serves. They never remove their chain, even while sleeping, so that's awkward.
Yeah.
A maester earns a link of a particular metal through mastery of a subject. And there are 15 known links that can be earned. Once a man is a full maester, he can be sent to a castle of a lord throughout the Seven Kingdoms. They're kind of a status symbol. Having a Cadillac, I got my maester.
Yeah.
A lord without a maester is considered unimportant, so you got to get your maester. Step 1. Unlike Brothers of the Night's Watch, maesters put their house names aside once they have taken their vows, so that's why he's just Maester Luwin.
So I have some news here. Last night, I actually had a dream about maesters, and it was a very specific and very odd dream. Now, I don't often dream about Game of Thrones, so this is news, I think. I think this belongs in the podcast. So my dream was a conversation between Bran and Jaime Lannister.
Huh.
In their episode 1 pomp. Jaime, the blonde, sort of like Herculean character, and Bran, little wall climbing funster. And the conversation goes, it's basically Jaime. This is a really strange dream. I'm going to admit it now. It's a really strange dream. Jaime has a theory that the Maesters are some kind of Freemason sort of cult who are secretly running the Seven Kingdoms. That their ravens are passing messages between them, and they know everything because their lords rely on them for writing things.
Right, yeah.
They know everything, and that they're basically some kind of cult that runs the whole thing. And he's explaining this to 7-year-old Bran, who's lapping it up, presumably.
Right.
But totally, he said, it's the ravens. The ravens are everywhere. And this was my dream, and it was really weird. And I was like...
That's pretty cool, though.
I do a little bit of dream fan fiction.
Yeah, I like it. You should probably write that down and send it to Martin.
Except it's crazy. I mean, that was Jaime Lannister talking to Bran for no reason about a crazy idea.
The idea behind it, I think, that could be where Dance with Dragons, finally wraps up.
I've been to parties where that guy talks to me about his nonsensical ideas with 100% conviction. And the look in Bran's eyes was exactly the look in my eyes. Like, I gotta get out of here. So, yeah.
Wow, yeah. I like it.
Yeah, it was really strange.
You should write that fan fiction.
I should write that fan fiction.
Yeah.
The thing is, again, I don't really believe in the plot. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, just to be clear.
Well, back to some background information. Real quick, Myr gets a mention, so I thought, let's real quick talk about Myr. It's one of the western free cities of Essos, and it's considered to be the seat of learning and arts.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, it gets mentioned. It's the lens.
The lens, correct.
I think it's from Myr,
yes.
Yeah. So, differences to the television show. The general scene is pretty well preserved in the show. The whole idea of Winterfell having warm springs under it was lost in the show. They never mentioned it.
What a shame.
So, in the show, Catelyn doesn't have to light a fire in her room to burn the message. There's one burning because it's cold.
Right.
The children are divvied up in the same way in the show as they are in the book, but that scene comes later in the TV show. The arrival of the note is slightly different.
Right.
In the book, it reinforced their positions, whereas in the show, it didn't exactly change their positions, but it was kind of the catalyst for the change of mind. Because before Lewin's arrival, TV Catelyn is with Ned, that they don't want to go. They don't want him to say yes. And the note doesn't change either of their minds, but Maester Lewin basically convinces them that it's the right thing to do at this point.
Yeah. Still doesn't change her tune.
Yeah.
And they did a little flip-flop. Ned's line about his father being summoned south and it not ending well is actually spoken by Catelyn in the TV show. So that's
she's definitely
complete polar opposite. So even the note is not enough to sway her at this point.
Yeah. Again, we mentioned this earlier, that the sense of ambition that we get from Catelyn in the book is lost in the show. She's definitely more saintly. And it also makes her treatment of Jon harder to swallow, because she treats Jon the same book and show.
Right.
But she's so saintly in the show that it seems really out of character.
Yeah. And this is a tiny little difference, but the TV note is delivered by a more conventional means, or a writer delivers it.
So, yeah, that's an interesting point, because in the book, it's been delivered by somebody who came up in the King's Party. Somebody in the King's Party has delivered that note.
Right.
And that feels like... I wonder if they intentionally went away from that in the TV show, because it creates... I mean, somebody there is working against Cersei Lannister and for the Arryns, and we don't know who that is.
Yeah, it's suspected that it was a member of the King's Party in the book.
Right, I mean, yeah, who else?
Right.
In a very strange inversion, there's actually more nudity in the book than in the TV show.
That is.
This won't last.
Yeah.
But cat flaps around naked.
Well, and I was just talking about when we were talking about maesters, that they wear that chain all the time. And in the book, Catelyn mentions that Maester Lewin pulls on the tight chain around his neck that's kind of pinching his neck, but in the TV show it's more of a big loose
and I think we definitely see people taking them off as well at various points in the TV show. But also it does actually raise a point though. If it's tight, how do you add an extra link and keep it tight? Do you have to then adjust every other link to keep it tight? So And the heavier chain made more, the longer chain made more sense. It would
that's
be
a good
easy
point.
Also, Maester Luwin wears the colours of House Stark. I'm not sure in the TV show that was... I thought the Maesters wore sort of a neutral, this is my Maester garb, not the colours of the house they served. But I'm not sure that... I'm not 100% sure I'm right in that. So on to Pedantry Corner. There's almost nothing here, but I just want one observation. Because Catelyn never lit a fire, her room was always warm. But the chairs, Ned drops down into a chair at one point, are gathered around the hearth.
Right.
Why? If you don't have a fire, why would you sit around the hearth? I guess a room needs a focal point. They don't have a TV.
Right,
so,
that's a good point, yep.
But maybe she definitely has a window, because Ned opens it. So I might think you might sit near the window for the light, say, for reading and what have you. Just think a little bit odd.
So, I don't know if this is necessarily pedantry or not, but it's a question that you and I had actually talked about earlier. Well, not on the podcast. We talked about it earlier. We're talking about it now on the podcast. Is it possible that Catelyn's just lying through her teeth about what's in the note?
Yeah.
Nobody sees it. Apparently, it's just gibberish. So,
which she could have showed it to people. Look, it's just gibberish before she burned it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're taking it all on just faith that she's telling the truth about what was in there.
Yeah, I liked our theory before that the note actually read, "Enjoy the lens and this fancy box with a hidden compartment." But she just wanted him to go to King's Landing.
So. Wow, that worked out perfectly. Got this box with a gibberish note in it. It said, "Say whatever you want about this note. Use it to your best advantage."
All right, so we don't have any reader mail this week, do we?
No, we don't.
That's all right. That's fine. But hey, if you send it, we'll read it.
That's right.
So in conclusion, I really like how Catelyn's coming together. Having read the book and then watched the show, I mentioned this. I'd sort of forgotten that she is a more nuanced character in the book, and I'm really enjoying being reintroduced to her.
Yeah.
She loves Eddard, but she pines a little for what might have been with Brandon.
And we got the old ghosts of Brandon and Ashara that's still affecting their lives. 15 years, I mentioned at the beginning of that chapter. They've been married for 15 years. Right. So that's a long time to be living with a pair of ghosts, I guess.
Yeah.
But maybe Brandon's ghost is only seen by Ned, and Ashara is only seen by Cat.
That's true. Good point.
Maybe they each see one ghost.
Yeah. She's mean to Jon Snow. I mean, not to his face here, but she's definitely not very nice to him.
Yeah.
It's partly whitewashed in the show, but I mean, it's still there in the show. It's just not as front and center, I don't think. I
just feel like if Ned told her the whole story, maybe she wouldn't take it out on Jon so much.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely right. I mean, definitely, it's that secret that burns away at her. If she knew the truth, she'd forgive Jon, I'm sure.
Yeah, it just seems, I don't know. But I'd also forgotten that she even voiced an inquiry into Jon's mother.
Although, you know what? I mean, actually, let's just role play that. Okay. Ned says, "Oh, it's Ashara Dane, man, I miss her. She was so hard. I keep him around because he reminds me of her." Yeah, I'm not actually sure that's going to create the thaw between.
That's a good point. Yeah. Maybe those details keep to yourself. Yeah. But it is interesting that Ned got so angry. He doesn't seem like a guy that flies off the handle about things. He seems rather even-tempered.
Which can only reinforce her suspicion that he's got some, there is more to this secret than it was just a one-night stand.
True, yeah. All this suspicion just feeds Kat's fear that Ned really loved this mother and she wasn't just a one-night stand.
Yeah.
Why else would he hide it?
Yeah. And I think that their relationship, we get more sense of their relationship. They're facing a tough decision, and he doesn't want to, but his wife does, and I think we all know how this ends.
I know how it ended in my house.
And mine. And winter's coming, so going to King's Landing's not a terrible idea.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, well, thanks for listening. We really appreciate it.
We certainly do.
So, at Ghosts Harrenhal?
At Ghosts Harrenhal is our Twitter handle. Yes, please go out and follow us. We put news. We put out news about the Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones world. News from George Martin when stuff is announced. Sometimes we put out facts and stuff like that, like little did you knows.
And ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com if you want to email us. thanks for listening.
Yep.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Hey everyone, it's McKelly. I just wanted to say real quick, if you're interested in some outtakes, stick around till after the music and hear just how many blunders we can make in one episode.
And cover some reader mail. We've got some.
Yes, we do.
Actually, do we? I don't think we do. That's a lie. If I skip that bit at the end, you'll know we didn't really.
I forgot the word again. What the hell?
It's a tropical storm. How many times?
Do you want to start over?
No, I think that's good, actually. We'll keep it in.
All right.
We might want to edit some of it out, but we'll keep it in.
Oh, shit.
So go from tropical storm.
All right.
McKelly, why don't you give us the summary?
All right. So,
just a second, just as an aside here. When we thought we couldn't edit this, we were much better.
we're right.
We would stay on track. Now we can edit it. We're like,
coughing.
Clown coughing here.
Forgetting what. I still can't think of the tale. I keep wanting to say thunderstorm. Thunderstorm.
We'll do
tropical storm.
We'll do a test at the end. What is the name of the thing that isn't a hurricane? Oh.
It's not a thunderstorm. I know that. King Aerys' Kingsguard during the rebellion.
And presumably he was the Sword of the Morning at the time, right?
Yes.
Being the most feared swordsman and a Dane.
You would think he'd be Sword of the Morning, and turns out he is. During the rebellion, I
threw you off there, didn't I?
I did. I forget what I was talking about. So Catelyn mentions that Ned killed Sir Arthur Dane, who was the most feared swordsman among King Aerys' Kingsguard. During the rebellion, for the love of Pete. I'm going to try this sentence one more time.
It's one of my bad sentences. Poorly constructed.